Welcome back to the channel. This is part 3 of a series that discusses the UK CPSA and the US NSCA. This time, walking a fine line with tournaments and target difficulty, score your own tournaments, and a deep dive into referee training and accreditation. Okay, let's pick up that conversation.
This is a kind of a whole section of things that I'm really interested in, just tournaments in general. So for sure, we're not, NSCA is not vetting targets at, a regional or anything other than nationals, I believe.
And yeah, for clarity, we don't do it at our, say, even our selection shoots for the England team, or we don't have the same regionals, but we'll do it at our English Open, our British Open, and our World Championships.
Right.
That's where we'll do that vetting, and that's not me vetting them. I'm not an expert course setter by any means. When we're vetting it, it'll obviously be in partnership with whoever is the course setter at the ground, and we're just pre-shooting it with some different levels of shooters to say, yep, the average is this. Is it too stiff, or is it too friendly a course for a championship? And I think that's always the balance, always got to be of, when you look at the numbers of people that shoot it, whether you're a C class or a B class shooter, you're paying the same money. You've got to enjoy it, but you've got to realize that it's not going to be as easy as your local shoot.
So what happens when, so you do this, okay, and I'm not sure where your percentages fall, but the C class guy is about where he's supposed, or isn't where he's supposed to be, but the double A guy is where he's supposed to be. The target setter thinks he's a genius, but the sense is that some changes need to be made. Like, how does that conversation go? And is it you, or is it the club driving it? Like, how does that dynamic play out?
It's both. I mean, and it's pretty obvious when, in all honesty, when you go around, and if you've got a squad that's that mix, and they go to a certain stand, and it might, in all honesty, in the time we've been doing it, it's 1 or 2 stands that make the difference. That you turn around and say, okay, that C-class shooter's gone round, and he's found it almost too easy, so we need to put 2 or 3 stands in there. But at the same time, you don't, and it'll be tweaking a target a little bit, maybe changing an on-report pair to a sim pair, and that makes a difference to the stand. But again, we come back to, I always come back to, you don't need to beat up everybody, and you don't need to put the course there for the treble A shots, because they can shoot great any day of the week, whatever the targets. And if you want to do an extreme shoot, extreme for double A's and treble A's, that's a different thing altogether.
As long as it's marketed appropriately.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's something, when you look at other things that we're looking at, that's most definitely something that we are looking at, of doing something like that. But again, I come back to, if we've got 1,500 people, 1,600 people shooting the Worlds, the majority of them are C, B, and A class shooters. A class shooters is always the biggest number of shooters, percentage-wise, in our championships.
Yeah, and you need to have product for them.
Exactly, because if they come in and they're used to shooting 80-something, and suddenly they come in and they shoot 60-something, they don't feel good. And the guy who's a C-class shooter, who normally shoots 65 at his home ground, shoots a 40-something, he's not enjoying that, and he's not going to come back.
But at the same time, it is
a championship.
It is a championship.
Of course, but it's a championship. And I have this conversation with people all the time. And treble A shots might go around the course, and they'll turn around in the car park and they go, "Oh, that was quite easy, Ian. I kind of enjoyed it. It was quite." I said, "Oh, did you straight it?" And of course they don't. And in the time I've been in, nobody has straighted a sporting championship, one that we've done. And they don't have to be, and this isn't me talking, this is the course setters, and everyone's got a different style, and some course setters that, I've, got to know, some puts, harder courses on and they're known for it, and others put on, more probably technical courses that on the face of it might look quite easy, but they're technical, but they don't beat everybody up.
So, you know, Joe Scull here in the United States, when he runs his monthly shoots, we all kind of know you don't turn up back in the clubhouse and tell Joe you thought his course was easy, because the first thing out of his mouth is going to be, oh, so then you shot all 100 of them.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Which has happened maybe once in the 5 years on the quote easy course that he runs or maybe twice, you know, since I've been there. But it sounds like what you're after is some balance.
It's that experience. You go back to that. It's, you know, it's got to be that balance. Absolutely, that is the word. When you've got, if it was a championship, and we've talked about this, if it was a championship and you had certain days or a certain course that was just for AA and AAA, then it'd be different. Absolutely, because you'd have to engineer it and manage it to their capability.
Now, the interesting thing about extreme tournaments when they're marketed that way is, you know, what I've observed in the United States is that when you do that, and we have several of them around the Northeast I go to regularly, you get as much or more turnout for those than you do the regular one, because people want to see what it is.
Correct. And that's why I think, you know, I said before, when you look at, if you talk about other things that probably we're looking at to develop beyond our championships, because our championships, our English Open, British Open, our World Championships, they're sort of set in stone. There's a lot of history, and I don't think we can mess with them too much. But I think, again, back to product development, other things that we could bring in that would be good for the sport, good for the association, could be an extreme event that the CPSA put on. And I think we still get C class, B class, and A class shooters wanting to go along and just saying, well, I shot it, you know, and I missed most of them, but I enjoyed it. And that's back to the enjoyment factor. But they've got to understand what they're getting into.
We're filming this during the 2024 World Sporting Championship, World English.
World Sporting over here.
World Sporting is the title.
And most of the time on that, there's some back and forth on it. But most of the time, even in England, people say sporting clays. You know, I shoot sporting.
Right.
That's what most people say. The English bit's just the title.
So Anthony Matarese added to the menu this time this Tower Challenge event, which actually my crew shot today. And it was fairly extreme. I mean, even the one target on the ground was a fairly extreme trap deal. And I watched the squad after us shoot it that had some B and C class shooters in it. And, you know, people walk off of that thing all smiles. Yeah. Right? Because they understand what it is. I think that the issue with the thing that always gets lost in the target difficulty conversation, to my observation, is that it's not about hard targets or easy targets. I don't even like the word easy. Let's call straightforward targets. It's people's expectations going into the event that maybe weren't properly managed, right? And I think if, as you say, there's some traditions that you need to respect with your championships, and there's people's expectation, and what you're saying is there's expectations of those events going in. Yeah. Right.
And if you see, you know, when I went and watched it, I did the same thing, sat there, watched it, walked up and looked at it. People are going in there and they know what it is. It's not a championship. It's, you know, it's a fun pool shoot type thing, high tower challenge, but it's not a championship. So if I'm a C-class shooter and I go in there and you know, only hit 3 targets, I'm happy I've hit 3 extreme targets. Right. But I haven't got a score up on my membership that I only hit 3 out of, 25 or whatever the number is on there, because I've gone in and I've shot the extreme challenge, you know. So I think they're good things to do, and they're the sort of things that when you look next year at the Worlds when it's back in England, you know, there's things like that. We'll definitely take Anthony's lead on that, and I think we'll put stuff like that in, you know, next year, because I think lots of people want to shoot it and they'll shoot it again and again.
I told him today, we can just do away with the 5-stand at M&M. It's tower only 5-stand going forward. You mentioned referee training and accreditation before. I'd really like to spend some time on this. Can you talk about how, first of all, let's get this out of the way. I believe that there is no such concept as a score your own shoot in the world of CPSA. Is that true?
Correct.
So you can't, there's no such thing as a tournament where you turn up and the squad scores themselves.
No.
Okay.
It's not classed as a registered shoot. So a CPSA registered shoot, you must use referees.
Right. And those referees have been accredited.
At the championships, so it's two-tier. If it's at a ground or a club, most of them will be registered referees. But at our championships, they must be CPSA qualified referees. And they must be qualified in the discipline of whatever that championship is.
And what's the qualification process roughly?
So we, the CPSA, run a course, so for sporting, we'll run a specific sporting course, we'll run a sport trap course and a DTL course, and so for each of the disciplines we run a referee course, and we do them all around. We have a tutor group that organise those, and we're running them every week, every other week, at grounds all around the UK. And it's a one-day course, pass or fail. You can't just turn up.
I was going to say, this was going to be my next question. You can fail.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can. Not many do because it's a good course, and our instructors, our tutors are good. And most of it from the referee side of things is obviously learning the rules, and then part of it's a classroom exam. Part, and then on the rules, and then another part, half the day, is out on the course, doing doing some scenarios and actually shooting and refereeing and shooting. And we literally have a little exam at the end where you are refereeing a squad, and they throw in various things like no fires, no birds, all those sort of things. Safety issues of people turning around with the gun closed. And the referees, there. So you can fail, yeah.
Okay.
But not many people do.
So where do the referees come from? Who is the population of referees at your events? Is it, retired folks? Is it kids in university?
It's not so many kids. It's definitely a lot of retired, and there's almost sort of an inner core group that that's all they do. They're retired, they go around, some of them will referee 2 or 3 times a week, because we have midweek shoots as well.
Yes.
Quite popular in England, Wednesday, Thursday shoots. So they're full 100 target registered shoots. And it's amazing how many people turn up to them. Richard, you mentioned, Folds, Owl's Lodge, he runs a very popular midweek, on a Thursday.
So how many people show up to a midweek shoot?
He can get 150 to 200 people turning up.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have essentially a core of accredited referees that could be refereeing 3 days a week.
Yeah, yeah. And then so you get the same group of them that come to the championships. But then when we get some of the bigger championships, we don't just need 20 referees, you need 60 or 70 referees. Yeah. So then you're calling in, and then we even have training sessions months before to train up new referees. So they can get some experience before the championships.
Now, that sounds awesome. But if we're being fair, it might be a little easier to pull that off in the UK than it is the United States because the geography is a lot different, right?
Absolutely.
You can have a core group of people that touch a lot of clubs that are all from only a couple of hours away from each other.
And that is absolutely, and I remember having the conversation years ago with one of the course setters, in America about referees, because I sort of looked around at the worlds and sort of said, oh, where do you get all your referees from? And, she sort of told me, oh, well, we just have to get them from the local area because we're limited, of the size of America. We can't fly them in from everywhere. Whereas, we'll get referees coming down from Scotland for our championships because they want to referee at the championships and they stay locally. And but even to get from Scotland down to, if we've got it in the middle of the country, might be 5-6 hours drive at most.
Right.
Whereas some of the others, it'll be a 2-hour drive and they're there for a week.
Right. Yeah.
So for us,
it's a slightly more compact problem to solve.
Yeah. And if we're training, people up at the grounds and the clubs, a lot of the local grounds, want to have, qualified referees for their weekly registered shoots. So even at your average registered shoot, weekly on a Saturday, there'll be most of the referees there. They don't have to be, but most of the referees will be qualified referees.
Yeah, so if we were going to tackle this in the United States, you'd really have to do it very regionally, right? Like you could have a referee centered around New Jersey that could serve that area, but that doesn't help Brett Seibert at Northbrook, right?
No.
He's got to figure out his own thing.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's a huge challenge over here. And I don't really know the answer to it because the costs involved in just getting a group of referees. I mean, some of my referees, we've got a head referee that we actually nominate. We have a head referee at all our championships, and so a guy called Josh Foote that we appointed last year. So he referees all of our major championships, and he runs the referees. And he also runs a training program. He'll come to the ground before with me. He'll see all the targets, and sort of vet them as well.
See, this is all happening at the club level in the United States. I mean, kind of out of necessity, and it's tough. I mean, if you see Robbie DeMeo at M&M this week, give the guy a pat on the back. I mean, he's corralling like 300. I think the number is like 340-ish. Something slots that he's got to fill. No, I think a person might be filling more than one slot to get to 340. But I mean, he's dealing with hundreds of referees. I've been down here in the last few months, and there's training going on. All these things that you're saying. But it does seem like a lot of the effort in the United States is duplicated between clubs, and maybe we ought to be taking like a more regional approach to this. That you're describing,
and not knowing enough about your regions, but I just know America quite well from sort of living and working here over the years. It's such a big country.
Right.
It's not. When you look at all the states and all the regions, it's huge. So I mean, that's logistically a nightmare.
Well, that's another episode in the can. We hope you found this interview entertaining. If you have, hit that like button and leave us a note in the comments. We enjoy your feedback. Stay tuned, we have more content to come. See you next time.